London's glittering Alcazar Theatre, 1925. A packed house watches the Crimson Veil, where star actor Victor Langston faces a dramatic duel. A shot rings out, real, not staged, and Langston falls dead. Hercule Poirot steps into the spotlight, unraveling a web of envy and ambition. Was it Clara Beaumont, the jealous co-star who fired the fatal bullet? Or the debt-ridden director, Edmund Fowler? Perhaps Tom Rourke, the secretive stagehand, holds the key. In a world of illusion, Poirot's little grey cells will expose the killer hiding behind the curtain. Dive into a mystery where every clue is a performance, and the truth is the final act. Chapter 1. The curtain rises. The Alcazar Theatre, nestled in the glittering heart of London's West End, stood resolute against the damp chill of an October evening in 1925. A fine drizzle misted the cobblestones, catching the glow of gaslights and the bold electric marquee that blazoned the Crimson Veil in letters of crimson and gold. The play, a new work by the enigmatic playwright Maurice Lefebvre, had stirred a fever of anticipation among the city's theatre-goers, promising a heady blend of romance, treachery, and a Venetian masquerade. Within the theatre's gilded foyer, the air was thick with the scent of tuberose perfume, the rustle of silk gowns, and the low hum of cultured voices exchanging gossip and expectation. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his evening dress, sat in a private box overlooking the stage, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache waxed to precise symmetry. The invitation had come from Sir Reginald Vance, the Alcazar's flamboyant owner, a man whose florid cheeks and booming laugh belied a shrewd business mind. "A spectacle, Poirot," Sir Reginald had declared over brandy at his club. "You'll see why the Alcazar is the jewel of London." Poirot, ever susceptible to the allure of human drama, whether on stage or off, had accepted, intrigued by the promise of artistry, and perhaps something more. Beside him sat Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend, whose boyish enthusiasm for the theatre was undimmed by the years. Hastings adjusted his tie, his eyes bright as he scanned the programme. "Looks a cracking show, Poirot," he said. "This Victor Langston chap's the talk of the town. They say he's the next Irving." Poirot's lips curved faintly. "The stage, mon ami, is a canvas for the passions, but it is the passions behind the curtain that interest Hercule Poirot." His grey eyes, sharp as cut glass, swept the auditorium, noting the glittering tiaras, the self-conscious postures of the nouveau riche, and the occasional furtive glance that hinted at secrets beneath the polish. The house lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. The heavy velvet curtain rose, revealing a sumptuous set. A Venetian palazzo, its painted arches bathed in the golden glow of simulated candlelight. The play unfolded with a rhythm that captivated, its dialogue sharp and its characters vivid. Victor Langston, as Count Alessandro, dominated the stage, a tall, magnetic figure with dark eyes and a voice that carried both charm and menace. His performance was a masterclass, each gesture deliberate, each line imbued with a smouldering intensity that held the audience rapt. The plot built to its climax in the third act, a duel born of betrayal. Count Alessandro faced his rival, played by the luminous Clara Beaumont, whose character, Lady Isabella, had uncovered his treachery. The scene was electric, the tension palpable as Clara, resplendent in a gown of ivory silk, raised a dueling pistol. The prop gun gleamed in her hand, its barrel catching the stage lights. "For your deceit, Alessandro, you pay the final price," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. The shot rang out, a sharp, deafening crack that echoed through the theatre. Langston staggered, his hand clutching his chest, a crimson stain blooming beneath his fingers. He fell with a grace that seemed almost choreographed, collapsing in a heap of velvet and lace. The audience gasped, some applauding the realism, others clutching their opera glasses in awe. The curtain descended swiftly, its heavy folds swallowing the scene. For a moment, silence held the theatre in thrall. Then, from backstage, a woman's scream shattered the spell. Whispers rippled through the crowd, growing into a murmur of unease. Poirot leaned forward, his gloved hands gripping the edge of the box. "Hastings," he said softly, his voice steady but urgent. "That was no theatrical effect. The man is dead." Hastings blinked, his face paling. "Good Lord, Poirot, you can't mean murder." Poirot did not reply. His eyes, now alight with a quiet intensity, were fixed on the stage below, where the curtain trembled as if stirred by an unseen hand. The game, he knew, had begun. Not the play, but a far darker drama, one that would demand the full measure of his little grey cells. Chapter 2. The Scene of the Crime. The Alcazar Theatre, moments ago, a temple of art and illusion, had transformed into a cauldron of chaos. The auditorium, still buzzing with the shock of Victor Langston's collapse, was now a restless sea of whispers and half-suppressed cries. Backstage, beyond the heavy velvet curtain, the air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the raw edge of panic. Hercule Poirot, his small, precise figure cutting through the disarray with an air of unyielding calm, navigated the narrow corridors with Captain Hastings at his heels. The theatre's labyrinthine backstage was a world unto itself, ropes and pulleys dangling like vines, costumes strewn over chairs, and the faint glow of gaslights casting long, wavering shadows on the walls. Poirot's patent leather shoes clicked softly on the wooden floor as he approached the stage, where a knot of actors and crew had gathered in a semicircle around the fallen star. Victor Langston lay sprawled beneath the painted arches of the Venetian set, his once vibrant features now slack, his dark eyes staring blankly at the rafters. The crimson stain on his chest, no longer a theatrical effect, glistened wetly under the stage lights. His velvet doublet, meticulously tailored to evoke a Renaissance nobleman, was ruined, the fabric torn where the bullet had entered. The sight was stark, almost obscene, in its contrast to the artifice around it. Hastings, his face pale but resolute, hovered at Poirot's elbow. "Good heavens, Poirot," he whispered. "It's ghastly. Right in the middle of the performance. Who could have done this?" Poirot's grey eyes, sharp and unblinking, surveyed the scene. "Patience, mon ami," he murmured. "The stage is a mirror of life, but it is also a mask. We must look beneath to find the truth." He knelt beside the body, careful not to disturb the scene, his gloved hands hovering over Langston's form, as if to coax secrets from the silent flesh. The wound was precise, a single entry point just below the heart. Death, Poirot surmised, had been instantaneous. A commotion at the stage's edge drew his attention. Inspector Japp, his familiar bulldog face set in a scowl, pushed through the crowd, his overcoat flapping. "Poirot," he called, his voice gruff but tinged with relief. "Fancy you being here. This is a bad business. Murder, plain as day, and in front of 1,000 witnesses." Behind him, 2 constables struggled to keep the curious at bay, their truncheons raised like ineffectual wands against the tide of onlookers. Poirot rose, brushing a speck of dust from his sleeve. "Inspector, it is indeed a crime, most theatrical. But the audience, they saw only the illusion. We must uncover the reality." He gestured to the prop gun, which lay a few feet from Langston's body, where it had fallen from Clara Beaumont's trembling hands. It was a beretta, its sleek lines incongruous amidst the pasteboard swords and papier-mâché goblets of the set. Poirot picked it up with a handkerchief, noting its weight and the faint warmth of the barrel. "This is no toy," he said softly. "A real firearm, loaded with a live round, most curious for a stage prop." Japp nodded grimly. "My men are securing the theatre. No one leaves until we've got statements. But it's a devil of a mess. Actors, crew, half of London's high society out there. And her." He jerked his thumb toward Clara Beaumont, who stood shivering in the wings, her ivory gown stark against the dark backdrop. Her face was ashen, her dark curls dishevelled, and her hands clutched a shawl as if it could shield her from the horror. "She fired the shot, Poirot. Says she didn't know the gun was real." Poirot's gaze lingered on Clara, her beauty undimmed, even in distress. "Mademoiselle Beaumont," he called, his voice gentle but commanding. She started, her eyes wide as she approached. "Tell me, if you please, of this gun. You handled it during the scene, non?" Clara's voice trembled, barely audible. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. It was part of the play. Lady Isabella shoots Count Alessandro. I thought it was a blank. It's always a blank. Tom checks the props every night." Her eyes darted to Tom Rourke, the stagehand, who stood nearby, his broad shoulders hunched and his cap twisted in his hands. His weathered face was a mask of unease, his eyes flickering between Clara and the body. Poirot turned to Rourke. "Monsieur Rourke, you are responsible for the props, are you not? Explain to Hercule Poirot how a real pistol found its way onto this stage." Rourke's jaw tightened, his Irish brogue thick with defensiveness. "I loaded the blanks myself this morning, sir. Same as always. The gun was in the prop room, locked up tight. I don't know how it got swapped." He glanced at Edmund Fowler, the director, who was barking orders at a trembling stagehand to clear the set. "Mr. Fowler's the one with the key." Fowler, a wiry man with a sharp nose and a temper to match, spun around at the mention of his name. "Don't drag me into this, Rourke," he snapped. "The prop room's secure, and I was in the lighting booth when it happened. You're the one who handles the blasted things." His voice cracked, betraying a hint of fear beneath his bluster. The Alcazar was his domain, and this scandal threatened to ruin him. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the argument. "Monsieur, mademoiselle, we will have order. The facts, they must be clear. A man is dead, and the method is this gun. We must determine who placed it here, and why." He turned to Japp. "Inspector, have you examined the bullet?" Japp nodded, producing a small evidence bag. "Dug it out of the floorboards under Langston. Matches the beretta. One shot, clean through. No accident, Poirot. This was deliberate." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "Deliberate, yes. But by whom? A jealous rival? A wronged lover? Or perhaps a more practical motive?" He glanced at Sir Reginald Vance, who had just stormed backstage, his florid face flushed with indignation. The theatre owner's presence was like a thundercloud, his voice booming over the din. "This is outrageous," Sir Reginald bellowed. "The Alcazar's reputation is at stake. Poirot, you must sort this out before the papers get wind of it. A murder in my theatre. Unthinkable." He mopped his brow with a silk handkerchief, his gold cufflinks glinting. Poirot inclined his head. Monsieur Vance, the truth will be found, but it requires method. First, we must secure the scene and question those closest to the crime. He gestured to the stage, where constables were now roping off the area around Langston's body. Hastings, mon ami. Observe the crowd. Note their faces, their whispers. The guilty, they often betray themselves in the chaos. Hastings, eager to contribute, nodded and slipped into the wings, his eyes scanning the assembled actors and crew. Poirot, meanwhile, approached the prop table, a cluttered affair littered with fake daggers, goblets, and a half-eaten sandwich. The prop gun's usual place was marked by a chalk outline, but no other firearms were present. He examined the table's surface, noting a faint smudge of grease near the edge. Curious, he murmured, filing the detail away. Clara, still hovering nearby, wrung her hands. Monsieur Poirot, I swear I didn't know. Victor and I, we were friends, nothing more. I'd never harm him. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her shawl. Poirot watched her closely, noting the tremble in her shoulders, the way her eyes avoided the body. Grief or guilt? The distinction was subtle, and Poirot was not yet ready to decide. He turned to Rourke, who was now helping a constable move a heavy prop chest. Monsieur Rourke, tell me of your routine. You check the props each day, oui? Who else has access to this gun? Rourke wiped his hands on his trousers, his eyes wary. Just me and Mr. Fowler, sir. The prop room's locked when I ain't there. I load the blanks in the morning, and the gun stays on the table till the scene. No one touches it but me and the actors. He hesitated, then added, Well, sometimes the prop boy, Jimmy, helps out, but he's just a lad. Wouldn't know a real gun from a toy. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And where is this Jimmy now? Rourke gestured vaguely toward the back of the stage. Out by the loading dock, I reckon. Said he was feeling sick. Poirot made a mental note to find the boy later. He turned to Fowler, who was now pacing near the footlights, muttering about cancelled performances. Monsieur Fowler, you hold the key to the prop room. Where was it during the day? Fowler stopped, his sharp features tightening. In my pocket, where it always is. I unlocked the room this morning for Rourke, then locked it again. No one could have got in without breaking the door down, and it's solid oak. He produced the key, a heavy brass affair, and handed it to Poirot. Poirot examined it, noting its worn edges, but no signs of a tampering. And you were where, precisely, when the shot was fired? In the lighting booth, adjusting the spots. Ask Jenkins, the technician. He'll vouch for me. Fowler's tone was defiant, but his hands betrayed a slight tremor. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing each detail. The prop room, the key, the grease smudge, Clara's tears, Rourke's unease, Fowler's alibi, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to cohere. He glanced at Langston's body, now covered with a sheet by one of Japp's men. The man's charisma, his talent, had made him a star, but also a target. Who had envied him enough to kill? Or was the motive colder, more calculated? Hastings returned, his notebook filled with scribbled observations. The cast's in a state, Poirot, he reported. Half of them are crying. The other half whispering about Langston's enemies. Seems he wasn't as beloved as his public thought. And there's talk of a row between him and Fowler last week. Something about script changes. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Bon, the human heart. It reveals itself in whispers. We must learn more of these enemies, Hastings. He turned to Japp, who was directing a constable to photograph the scene. "Inspector, I suggest we gather the principal players in the manager's office. There, we may question them without the distraction of this pandemonium." Japp agreed, and soon the group was ushered into Sir Reginald's opulent office, a room lined with mahogany panels and portraits of theatrical luminaries. Clara, Rourke, Fowler, and Sir Reginald took seats around a polished table, their faces a study in contrasting emotions: fear, defiance, anger, and despair. Poirot stood at the head, his small stature belied by the authority in his gaze. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and measured, "a crime has been committed, a life taken in the midst of art. One of you, or someone close, has orchestrated this tragedy. Hercule Poirot will find the truth, but I require your honesty. Let us begin with the gun. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you say you trusted it was safe, yet you held it, you fired it. Did you feel anything unusual? Its weight, perhaps?" Clara's eyes widened. I don't know. It felt heavy, I suppose, but I thought it was meant to. I'm no expert in guns." Her voice wavered, and she clasped her hands tightly. Poirot turned to Rourke. "And you, Monsieur Rourke, you insist the blanks were loaded this morning. Where was the gun between then and the performance?" "On the prop table, sir," Rourke said. "I set it there myself after lunch. No one touched it, far as I know." Fowler interjected. "That's right. I saw it there at 3 o'clock when I checked the set. Everything was in order." Poirot's moustache twitched. "And yet, a real gun appeared. Someone had access. Someone with motive. Monsieur Langston. He was a man of talent, but also of enemies?" The room fell silent. Clara's eyes dropped to her lap. Rourke shifted uncomfortably, and Fowler's jaw tightened. Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "Victor was a star, Poirot. Stars attract jealousy. But murder? Surely not." Poirot smiled faintly. "Jealousy, Monsieur Vance, is a powerful poison. And poison, it can kill as surely as a bullet." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "We will reconvene tomorrow. Inspector Japp, I trust you will secure the prop room and the theatre. No one must disturb the scene." As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes tracing the room's details: the heavy curtains, the locked cabinets, the faint scent of cigar smoke lingering from Sir Reginald's presence. Hastings, sensing his friend's focus, whispered, "What's on your mind, Poirot?" "You've got that. Look. The look, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice soft. "It is the look of a man who sees the threads of a web, but not yet the spider. This gun, it was not placed by chance. Someone planned this, someone clever, and Hercule Poirot will find them." The theatre's lights dimmed as the constables ushered out the last of the crew. Outside, the London fog curled around the Alcazar, wrapping its secrets in a shroud. Poirot adjusted his hat, his mind already turning over the clues, the faces, the lies. The stage was set, and the investigation had begun. Chapter 3. The players assembled. The morning after Victor Langston's death, the Alcazar Theatre lay under a pall of silence, its usual vibrancy muted by the shadow of tragedy. The drizzle had ceased, leaving London's streets slick and gleaming under a weak sun. Within the manager's office, a room of dark wood and heavy drapes, Hercule Poirot stood with the precision of a conductor before an orchestra, his small frame radiating authority. The air was heavy with the scent of the polished oak and the faint tang of Sir Reginald Vance's cigar, smoked in agitation before Poirot's arrival. The suspects, Clara Beaumont, Edmund Fowler, Tom Rourke, and Sir Reginald himself, sat around the oval table, their faces etched with varying shades of unease, defiance, and fatigue. Captain Hastings, notebook in hand, stood by the door, his earnest gaze darting between the players in this grim drama. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp as a hawk's, surveyed the group. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and measured, "we are gathered to unravel a crime most audacious. A murder performed before an audience, yet hidden in plain sight. Victor Langston is dead, killed by a bullet from a gun that should have been harmless. One of you, or someone you know, has woven this tragedy. Hercule Poirot seeks the truth, and I will have it. Let us proceed with method." He turned first to Clara Beaumont, whose elegance remained intact despite the strain in her posture. Her dark curls were pinned neatly, but her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, betrayed her nerves. "Mademoiselle Beaumont," Poirot said, "you were the last to hold the fatal weapon. Tell me, if you please, of your actions yesterday, from the moment you arrived at the theatre." Clara's eyes flickered, meeting his briefly before dropping to the table. "I arrived at noon for the final rehearsal," she said, her voice low but steady. "We ran through the duel scene twice with the prop gun. It was as Pandora's box, I swear. Blanks, as always. I took it from the prop table just before the performance, as I always do. I never suspected—" Her voice faltered, and she pressed a hand to her lips. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you noticed nothing unusual about the gun? Its weight? Its appearance?" She shook her head. "It looked the same. I'm no expert in firearms, Monsieur Poirot. I trusted it was. Safe." A tear glistened in her eye, but she brushed it away with a delicate gesture. Hastings, scribbling notes, whispered to Poirot, "She's a fine actress, but that tear looked real enough." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The heart, it can play many roles, mon ami." He turned to Edmund Fowler, the director, whose sharp features were drawn tight with irritation. "Monsieur Fowler, you oversee the production. The prop room, it is under your control, non?" Fowler's thin lips curled into a scowl. "Yes, and it's locked tighter than a bank vault. I keep the key on me at all times." He patted his waistcoat pocket, producing the brass key as evidence. "No one could have got in without my knowledge." "Yet someone did," Poirot said mildly. "The gun was replaced. Tell me, who else has access to this room?" "No one, officially," Fowler replied. "Rourke handles the props, but I'm always there when the room's open. The cast comes in and out for costumes, but they're not allowed near the weapons. I run a tight ship." Poirot's gaze shifted to Tom Rourke, the stagehand, whose calloused hands fidgeted with his cap. His broad face was flushed, his eyes avoiding Poirot's. "Monsieur Rourke, you loaded the blanks, you say. Where was the gun kept during the day?" Rourke cleared his throat, his voice gruff. "In the prop room, locked up till I brought it out for the afternoon rehearsal. After that, it sat on the prop table in the wings, ready for the duel scene. Anyone could have walked by, I suppose, but it's a busy place. Someone would have noticed." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Anyone, you say? And yet, no one did. Curious, no?" He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Monsieur Langston, he was a man of great talent, but also, perhaps, of enemies. Who among you held a grudge against him?" The room bristled with tension. Clara's hands tightened, Fowler's scowl deepened, and Rourke's cap twisted further in his grip. Sir Reginald, seated at the table's head, slammed his fist down, his jowls quivering. "This is preposterous, Poirot. Victor was the heart of this theatre. His death is a disaster for us all. Who'd want to kill their own star?" Poirot stopped pacing, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Vance, the heart of a theatre beats for many reasons: fame, fortune, jealousy. A star shines brightly, but it also casts shadows. Let us consider motives. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you and Monsieur Langston were rivals, were you not?" Clara's head snapped up, her cheeks flushing. "Rivals? No, we were colleagues. Victor and I, we worked well together. Yes, he got the bigger roles, but that's the business. I was happy for him." Her voice held a note of defiance, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something darker. Hastings leaned toward Poirot, muttering, "She's not telling the whole truth, I'd wager. There's bad blood there." Poirot nodded subtly, then turned to Fowler. "And you, Monsieur Fowler? I hear you quarrelled with Langston over the script. He wished to change your vision, no?" Fowler's eyes flashed. "He was a meddling fool, always rewriting my lines. Thought he knew better than the director. But I'd be mad to kill him. He was our draw. Without him, the play's a risk." His voice softened, almost regretful. "He was brilliant. Damn him." Poirot's attention shifted to Rourke. "And you, Monsieur Rourke, did you harbour ill feelings toward the victim?" Rourke's face reddened. "Me? No, sir. Victor was a good sort. Paid me a fair wage, never treated me like dirt. Some actors do, you know." He glanced at Clara, then quickly away, as if regretting the look. Poirot noted the glance, his mind cataloguing the interplay of glances and silences. "And you, Monsieur Vance, the loss of your star, it threatens your theatre's success. Yet a scandal, it can also fill seats, no?" Sir Reginald's face purpled. "How dare you, sir? The Alcazar is a temple of art, not a circus. I'd sooner close the doors than profit from murder." His indignation seemed genuine, but Poirot's eyes lingered on the man's trembling hands, betraying more than his words. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's questions pressing upon them. He clasped his hands before him, his voice soft but commanding. "Each of you claims innocence, yet the gun tells a different story. It was no accident, this murder. Someone with access, with motive, made the switch. I ask you now to reflect. Any detail, however small, may unlock this mystery. Speak now, or the truth will find you later." No one spoke. Clara stared at her hands. Fowler's jaw clenched. Rourke's cap was now a crumpled mess, and Sir Reginald mopped his brow. Poirot's gaze swept over them, his little grey cells humming. "Very well," he said. "We are done for now. But rest assured, Hercule Poirot does not rest until justice is served." As the group dispersed, Hastings approached, his voice low. "They're all hiding something, Poirot. Clara's too polished, Fowler's too angry, Rourke's too nervous, and Vance, well, he's a bit too theatrical himself." Poirot smiled faintly. "You observe well, Hastings, but it is not what they say, but what they do not say, that matters. The key to this crime lies in the silences between their words. Come, we return to the stage. The scene itself may speak where they do not." They left the office, stepping into the dim corridor leading to the stage. The theatre, empty now, save for a lone constable guarding the door, felt like a hollow shell, its grandeur tarnished by death. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments of motive and opportunity. The game was afoot, and the players, whether they knew it or not, were already on his stage. Chapter 4. Shadows of Envy. The Alcazar Theatre, bathed in the pale light of a late morning sun, stood as a silent sentinel over the secrets it harboured. The previous night's tragedy had left its mark. The stage, once alive with the passion of the crimson veil, now felt like a mausoleum, its painted Venetian arches mocking the grim reality beneath them. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his tailored overcoat, navigated the backstage corridors with Captain Hastings at his side, the latter clutching his notebook like a talisman against the morning's chill. The air was heavy with the scent of sawdust and old grease paint, a reminder of the theatre's dual nature, illusion and truth intertwined. Poirot's destination was the prop room, a cramped, cluttered space tucked behind the stage. He had requested access from Sir Reginald Vance, who, still reeling from the scandal, had reluctantly provided the key. The door, a solid oak affair, creaked as Poirot unlocked it, revealing a chaotic trove of theatrical relics, feathered hats, tarnished goblets, and a rack of imitation swords glinting dully in the light of a single bulb. Hastings coughed, waving away a puff of dust. "Good Lord, Poirot. It's a wonder they find anything in this mess." Poirot's grey eyes gleamed as he surveyed the room. Order, mon ami, is not always visible to the eye, but the mind of Hercule Poirot, it seeks the pattern beneath the chaos. He moved to the prop table, where the fatal beretta had rested before the performance. The table was bare now, the gun secured by Inspector Japp's men, but Poirot's fingers traced its edge, pausing at a faint smudge of grease noted the previous night. He bent closer, his magnifying glass catching the light as he examined the mark. "This grease, it is not theatrical makeup. It is mechanical, perhaps from a tool. A clue, Hastings, of someone who worked with their hands." Hastings frowned, scribbling in his notebook. "That points to Rourke, doesn't it? He's the stagehand, always tinkering with the set." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone cautious, "but we must not leap to conclusions. The grease, it may belong to another, or it may have been left to mislead." His gaze shifted to a small window above the door, its latch unfastened, the frame slightly warped. He stood on a crate to inspect it, noting a faint scratch on the sill. "Regardez, Hastings. This window, it is a point of entry. Small, yes, but sufficient for a determined hand to reach the lock or to pass a gun." Hastings peered up, his brow furrowing. "You think someone climbed through? That's a tight squeeze, even for a slender chap." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The body. It can be agile when the motive is strong. We must consider who had access and who had reason." He stepped down, dusting his gloves. "Come, we will speak to the cast. The heart of this mystery lies not only in objects, but in passions." They found the rehearsal hall, a cavernous space where the cast of the Crimson Veil had gathered, their faces a mix of grief and suspicion. Clara Beaumont sat, apart, her ivory complexion stark against her dark dress, a script clutched in her hands like a shield. Edmund Fowler paced near a chalked-out stage mark, muttering about rewrites, while Tom Rourke leaned against a wall, polishing a brass fitting with unnecessary vigour. Other actors milled about, their whispers a low hum of speculation. Poirot approached Clara first, his manner gentle but probing. "Mademoiselle Beaumont, you and Monsieur Langston were colleagues, oui, but also competitors. I have heard whispers of a film role, a grand opportunity that went to him, not you. Is this true?" Clara's eyes flashed, but her voice remained controlled. "Yes, it's true. Victor was cast in The Gilded Crown, a role I auditioned for. The director chose him, said he had the star quality. But that's the theatre, Monsieur Poirot. One learns to accept disappointment." Her fingers tightened on the script, betraying a flicker of resentment. Poirot nodded, his gaze unwavering. And this disappointment, it did not fester. You did not wish to dim his star, even a little? Clara's lips parted, then closed. I admired Victor, she said firmly. His talent pushed me to be better. I had no reason to harm him. Yet her eyes darted to the floor, avoiding Poirot's scrutiny. Hastings, standing nearby, murmured, "She's hiding something, Poirot." That look. She's not as innocent as she plays. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. All in good time, mon ami. He turned to Fowler, who had stopped pacing to glare at a young actress adjusting her costume. Monsieur Fowler, you and Monsieur Langston, you clashed often, no? He challenged your authority, rewrote your vision. Such conflicts, they can breed resentment. Fowler's sharp nose twitched, his voice biting. Langston was a prima donna, always meddling. Wanted to turn my play into his showcase. We argued, yes, but that's theatre. Kill him. I'd sooner kill my own career. He was the draw, Poirot. Without him, we're scrambling. His eyes flickered with something like regret, but his tone held a defensive edge. Poirot's gaze lingered, noting the director's clenched fists. Your career, Monsieur Fowler, it depends on this play's success. A scandal. It might ruin you, or it might fill the seats with curious crowds. A calculated risk, perhaps. Fowler's face reddened. You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. I'm a director, not a murderer. He turned away, resuming his pacing. Poirot moved to Rourke, who was now wiping his hands on a rag, his broad shoulders tense. Monsieur Rourke, you are the guardian of the props. Yet the gun, it was tampered with. Tell me, who else approached the prop table yesterday? Rourke's eyes narrowed, his voice gruff. No one, sir. Not that I saw. It's a busy stage. Actors, crew, all rushing about. I can't watch every second. But I checked the gun at noon, and it was fine. He hesitated, then added, I did step away for a bit, maybe 10 minutes, to grab a smoke. The table was in plain sight, though. Poirot's eyebrows rose. 10 minutes, you say? And where did you go? Rourke shifted, his cap tilting in his hands. Out back, by the loading dock. Needed some air. His tone was evasive, his eyes avoiding Poirot's. Poirot made a mental note, his mind turning over the stagehand's absence. And during this time, the prop table, it was unguarded. Not unguarded, Rourke said quickly. Plenty of folks around. Someone would have seen. Yet no one did, Poirot said softly. He turned to the group, raising his voice. Mesdames et messieurs, the truth lies in the details. Someone saw something. Someone knows something. I urge you to speak, for the net of justice, it tightens. A murmur ran through the cast, but no one stepped forward. Poirot's eyes scanned their faces, catching a fleeting glance between Clara and a young actress, Elsie Carter, who stood in the corner, her hands twisting nervously. He filed the observation away, sensing a thread to tug later. As the cast dispersed for a break, Poirot and Hastings returned to the prop room. Poirot examined the window again, noting a faint thread caught on the splintered frame. A silken strand, pale as Clara's gown from the performance. Interesting, he murmured, pocketing the thread with his handkerchief. A clue, perhaps, of someone who climbed through. Hastings frowned. Clara? She's slender enough, but why risk it? She had the gun in her hands already. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The why, Hastings, is the heart of the matter. Envy, ambition, revenge. These are the shadows that drive such acts. We must learn more of Mademoiselle Beaumont's heart, and of those who orbit her star. They left the prop room, locking it behind them. Outside, the theatre's marquee loomed, its letters now a grim irony. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the grease, the thread, the unguarded moments. The puzzle was taking shape, but the picture remained elusive. "Come, Hastings," he said, adjusting his hat. "We will take tea at the Savoy. There, in the calm, the little grey cells will work their magic." As they stepped into the London street, the fog curling around them, Poirot felt the weight of the mystery deepen. The Alcazar was a stage, but its true drama was only beginning to unfold. Chapter 5. The Stagehand's Secret. The Alcazar Theatre, though shuttered to the public, hummed with a restless energy as the investigation into Victor Langston's murder deepened. The afternoon light filtered through high, grimy windows, casting a lattice of shadows across the backstage corridors. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat draped neatly over his arm, moved with the precision of a cat, his polished shoes silent on the worn floorboards. Captain Hastings followed, his face set in a mixture of curiosity and unease, his notebook now a constant companion. The air carried the faint scent of linseed oil and the lingering bitterness of yesterday's gunpowder, a reminder of the violence that had shattered the theatre's illusion. Poirot's destination was the wings, where Tom Rourke, the burly stagehand, was busy coiling a rope with a vigour that seemed more distraction than necessity. The man's broad hands, calloused from years of manual labour, moved with practised ease, but his eyes darted nervously, betraying a mind ill at ease. Poirot had noted Rourke's evasiveness during their earlier encounter, particularly his vague mention of a break during which the prop table had been left unattended. The stagehand's secret, Poirot sensed, was a thread that might unravel the mystery. "Monsieur Rourke," Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet but edged with authority, "you are a man of the shadows, no? You work behind the curtain, unseen, yet you see all. Tell me, if you please, of this break you took yesterday. You said you needed air, but I think there is more to the story." Rourke's hands stilled, the rope slipping slightly in his grip. His weathered face flushed, and he glanced towards the stage, where a few crew members were adjusting a backdrop. "I told you, sir," he said, his Irish brogue thick with defensiveness. "I stepped out to the loading dock for a smoke. 10 minutes, no more. The prop table was in plain sight. Anyone could have seen if someone tampered with the gun." Poirot's grey eyes narrowed, catching the slight tremor in Rourke's voice. 10 minutes, you say, is time enough for mischief, Monsieur Rourke. And you were alone, oui? Or perhaps not." He stepped closer, his small stature somehow commanding the space. "You mentioned meeting someone. Who was it?" Rourke's jaw tightened, and he shoved the rope into a crate with unnecessary force. "No one important," he muttered. "Just a friend, personal business, nothing to do with this." Hastings, standing a few paces back, raised an eyebrow. "A friend, eh? Sounds like you're hiding something, Rourke. A woman, perhaps." His tone was half teasing, but his eyes were sharp, watching for a reaction. Rourke's flush deepened, and he turned away, busying himself with a nearby pulley. "You're barking up the wrong tree, Captain. I ain't got no secrets worth killing for." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "Monsieur Rourke, the truth, it is like a stage light. It reveals what hides in the dark. If you met someone, It may be a detail of importance. Speak, or I shall find out another way." Rourke hesitated, his broad shoulders sagging slightly. "All right," he said at last, his voice low. "I met Elsie Carter, one of the chorus girls. She needed to talk, that's all. We stepped out back for a bit. Nothing more to it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Mademoiselle Carter, the young actress I saw in the rehearsal hall? Bon. And what was so urgent that you left your post?" Rourke shifted uncomfortably, his cap now a crumpled mass in his hands. "She was upset about Victor. Said he'd been cruel to her, snapping at her during rehearsals. She just needed a shoulder, you know? I didn't think nothing of it." Poirot filed the information away, his mind turning over the implications. Elsie Carter, a minor player in the cast, had not yet been questioned, but her connection to both Rourke and Langston was a new thread in the web. "And during this talk," Poirot pressed, "you saw no one near the prop table, no one lingering in the wings?" Rourke shook his head. "It was a madhouse, sir. Actors, crew, all rushing about. I didn't notice nothing odd." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Very well, Monsieur Rourke. But know this, the truth, it has a way of surfacing, like a bubble in still water. I will speak with Mademoiselle Carter." As Rourke returned to his work, visibly relieved to be dismissed, Hastings leaned in. "He's cagey, Poirot. That story about Elsie. Do you buy it? Sounds like he's covering for someone." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice soft. "Or perhaps he is a pawn in a larger game. The prop table was unguarded, yet no one saw the switch. This suggests planning, Hastings. Someone who knew Rourke's habits, who knew when he would be absent." He paused, his eyes drifting to the stage where the painted palazzo stood silent. "Come, we will find Mademoiselle Carter." They located Elsie Carter in the costume room, a narrow space lined with racks of gowns and doublets. The young actress, barely 20, was mending a torn hem, her delicate fingers trembling slightly as she worked. Her auburn hair was pinned loosely, and her green eyes widened at the sight of Poirot and Hastings. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice soft but nervous. "Is it true you're investigating Victor's death?" "Indeed, mademoiselle," Poirot replied, his tone gentle. "And I am told you spoke with Monsieur Rourke yesterday, during a break. What was the nature of this conversation?" Elsie's needle paused, and she bit her lip. "It was personal," she said, echoing Rourke's evasiveness. "I was upset, that's all. Victor could be harsh sometimes. He'd snapped at me during rehearsal, said I was out of step in the masquerade scene. I needed to clear my head, and Tom, Mr. Rourke, was kind enough to listen." Poirot's gaze was steady, piercing. "And this harshness from Monsieur Langston, it was unusual." Elsie hesitated, then nodded. "He was under pressure, I think. The play, the reviews, he wanted everything perfect. But he wasn't cruel, not really. Just sharp." Her eyes dropped to the fabric in her lap, and Poirot noted the faint flush on her cheeks. "Tell me, mademoiselle," he continued, "did you see anyone near the prop table during this time? Anyone who might have tampered with the gun?" Elsie shook her head, her curls bouncing. "No, sir. I was out back with Tom. We didn't see the stage." She paused, then added, "But I heard Clara arguing with Victor earlier that day, in his dressing room. Something about a role, I think. She sounded angry." Poirot's eyebrows rose slightly. "An argument, you say? This is most interesting. And what time was this?" "Around 11, before rehearsal," Elsie said. "I was passing by, fetching a costume. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their voices carried. Hastings scribbled furiously, muttering, "Clara again. She's at the heart of this, Poirot." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Merci, Mademoiselle Carter. You have been most helpful. If you recall anything else, you will tell me, oui?" Elsie nodded, her eyes wide with apprehension. As Poirot and Hastings left the costume room, the detective's mind churned. Clara's argument with Langston, Rourke's absence, Elsie's nervous confession. The pieces were accumulating, but the puzzle remained incomplete. "Hastings," Poirot said, "we must verify this argument. An angry Clara, a distracted Rourke, these are threads that may lead to the truth." They made their way to Clara's dressing room, a small but elegant space adorned with mirrors and vases of roses. Clara was there, adjusting her hair, her composure restored, but her eyes wary. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, rising, "have you found something?" "Perhaps, mademoiselle," Poirot replied, his tone mild. "I'm told you argued with Monsieur Langston yesterday morning. A matter of a role, was it not?" Clara's face stiffened, but she recovered quickly. "A misunderstanding," she said smoothly. "Victor and I discussed a scene change. He wanted more lines for his character, and I thought it unbalanced the play. It was professional. Nothing more." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Yet voices were raised, mademoiselle, and this was hours before you fired the fatal shot. Tell me, did you visit the prop room that day?" Clara's eyes flickered. Yes, to fetch a fan for my costume. But I didn't touch the gun. I swear it." Poirot nodded, noting the faint thread on her sleeve, similar to the one found on the prop room's window frame. "We shall see," he said softly. "The truth. It reveals itself in time." As they left the dressing room, Hastings shook his head. "She's slippery, Poirot. That argument, the prop room, she's tied to every clue." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low. "But the knot is not yet tight. Clara's ambition, Rourke's absence, Elsie's fear, these are shadows, not the substance. We must dig deeper." Outside, the London sky was grey, the theatre's marquee a silent witness to the drama within. Poirot adjusted his scarf, his mind alight with possibilities. The stagehand's secret was but one piece of the puzzle, and the little grey cells were far from satisfied. Chapter 6. The Arm. Director's alibi. The Savoy. Hotel, a bastion of elegance on the Strand, offered a stark contrast to the shadowed corridors of the Alcazar Theatre. Its tea-room, with its gleaming chandeliers and crisp linen tablecloths, was a haven of civility, where the clink of porcelain and the murmur of polite conversation provided the perfect backdrop for Hercule Poirot's deliberations. He sat at a corner table, his tisane steaming gently before him, his gloved hands folded with precision. Captain Hastings, ever the eager companion, sipped his tea with less finesse, his eyes bright with the thrill of the chase. The afternoon light filtered through tall windows, casting a golden glow over the room. But Poirot's mind was elsewhere, turning over the threads of the mystery that bound Victor Langston's death to the theatre's players. "Monsieur Fowler," Poirot said, his voice soft but deliberate as he addressed the director seated across from him. Edmund Fowler, his wiry frame taut with impatience, had agreed to meet Poirot at the Savoy, though his sharp features betrayed his reluctance. His tie was slightly askew, a rare lapse for a man known for his meticulous direction. "You claim you were in the lighting booth when the fatal shot was fired. This is your alibi, no? Yet I find the details. They are Imprecise. Fowler's eyes narrowed, his fingers drumming on the table. Imprecise? I told you, Poirot. I was with Jenkins, the lighting technician, adjusting the spots for the duel scene. It's a critical moment. Needed perfect timing. Jenkins will confirm it. His voice carried a defensive edge, as if he sensed the net of suspicion tightening. Poirot sipped his tisane, his grey eyes unblinking. And yet, Monsieur Fowler, I observe a small discrepancy. Your watch, it runs slow by 5 minutes. I noticed it yesterday in the manager's office. If you were in the booth at the moment of the shot, this discrepancy could place you elsewhere. None. Fowler's hand froze mid-drum, his face paling slightly. My watch? That's absurd. It's an old habit. I set it slow to keep the cast on their toes. Rehearsals start early, you see. It's nothing sinister. He forced a laugh, but it rang hollow. Hastings, leaning forward, interjected. Sounds like a convenient excuse, if you ask me. 5 minutes is enough time to slip down to the stage, swap a gun, and be back before anyone notices. Poirot raised a hand, silencing his friend. Patience, Hastings. Monsieur Fowler, let us assume your alibi holds. Tell me of your relationship with Monsieur Langston. You argued, oui. He challenged your authority, sought to reshape your play. Such conflicts, they can breed a dangerous resentment. Fowler's jaw tightened, his sharp nose twitching. Victor was a bloody nuisance, I'll admit. Always rewriting lines, demanding more spotlight. He thought he was the genius, not me. But I needed him. His name sold tickets. Killing him would be like burning my own script. He leaned back, crossing his arms, but his eyes darted to the side, avoiding Poirot's gaze. Poirot's moustache twitched, a subtle sign of his mind at work. And yet, monsieur, a scandal such as this, it draws crowds. The curious, they flock to see the stage where a star fell. Your play, it may yet profit from this tragedy, non? Fowler's face reddened, his voice rising. That's a low blow, Poirot. I'm a director, not a showman profiting off death. The Alcazar's my life's work. I'd never risk it for some morbid publicity stunt. His indignation seemed genuine, but Poirot noted the slight tremor in his hands, the way his fingers clutched his teacup. Very well, Poirot said, his tone mild. But let us consider another angle. I have learned you have debts, Monsieur Fowler. Gambling debts, to be precise. A successful play, it might ease such burdens, but a failed one. Or perhaps a star who threatens your control. These are motives, non? Fowler's eyes widened, then narrowed. How did you— That's private, Poirot. Yes, I've had some bad luck at the tables, but I'm managing. Langston's death doesn't pay my debts. It complicates everything. Rehearsals are a mess, the cast's in shock. If anything, this ruins me. He pushed his chair back, as if ready to leave, but Poirot's calm gaze held him in place. Rouen, or reinvention, Poirot mused. The theatre, it thrives on drama, both on and off the stage. Tell me, Monsieur Fowler, who else knew of your debts? Did Monsieur Langston, perhaps? Fowler hesitated, then shook his head. No, he didn't. I kept that quiet. Only Sir Reginald knows, and he's been understanding, shall we say. His voice dropped, a hint of bitterness creeping in. He's got his own troubles, mind you. Investors breathing down his neck. But that's not your concern. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Everything, monsieur, is my concern when murder is involved. Let us return to the lighting booth. This Jenkins, he is reliable. Solid as a rock, Fowler said quickly. Been with the Alcazar for years. Ask him yourself. He'll tell you I was there." Poirot nodded, making a mental note to verify the technician's account. "And the prop room key. It remained in your pocket all day?" "Never left it," Fowler said, patting his waistcoat again. "I unlocked the room for Rourke at 9, locked it again after he set up the props. No one else got near it." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Yet a real gun found its way to the stage. Someone, monsieur, was cleverer than you think." He rose, signaling the end of the interview. "Merci, Monsieur Fowler. I will speak with Jenkins, and we will see if your alibi holds." As Fowler left, his steps brisk with suppressed agitation, Hastings leaned in. "He's rattled, Poirot. That business about the watch and the debts, you've got him on edge. Do you think he's our man?" Poirot adjusted his cufflinks, his expression thoughtful. "Fowler, he is a man of ego, Hastings, and ego can drive desperate acts, but his alibi, if true, limits his opportunity. We must confirm with Jenkins, and we must explore his debts further. A man in debt is a man under pressure, and pressure, it can crack even the strongest facade." They left the Savoy, stepping into the bustle of the Strand. The London air was crisp, tinged with the scent of coal smoke and wet pavement. Poirot's mind was alight with possibilities, the director's words weaving into the tapestry of clues. Fowler's alibi, the slow watch, the gambling debts, these were pieces, but not yet the whole. As they hailed a cab to return to the theatre, Poirot's thoughts turned to the other players. Clara, with her hidden resentment, Rourke, with his guarded secret, and Elsie, whose nervous confession hinted at deeper currents. The stage was set, and the truth, Poirot knew, was waiting in the wings. Chapter 7. A Clue in the Costume. The Alcazar Theatre, though closed to its usual throng of eager patrons, pulsed with a quiet intensity as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned to its shadowed interior. The afternoon light, filtering through the high windows of the stage, cast a ghostly glow over the abandoned set of the Crimson Veil. The painted Venetian palazzo, with its faux marble arches, seemed to mock the grim reality of Victor Langston's death, its artifice a stark contrast to the blood that had stained the floorboards. Poirot, his small frame erect and his eyes sharp with purpose, led the way to the costume room, a narrow chamber where the air was thick with the scent of mothballs and faded perfume. Hastings followed, his notebook tucked under his arm, his face a mixture of determination and lingering unease. Poirot's interest had turned to the physical remnants of the fatal performance, specifically Clara Beaumont's costume, the ivory silk gown she had worn as Lady Isabella during the duel scene. The dress, now hanging on a rack among a riot of velvet cloaks and feathered hats, was a delicate creation, its bodice embroidered with silver thread and its skirt flowing like liquid moonlight. Poirot approached it with the reverence of an archaeologist unearthing a relic, his gloved hands hovering over the fabric as he examined it under the dim light of a gas lamp. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, his voice low but vibrant with discovery. "This gown, it is more than a costume. It is a witness to the crime." He pointed to the right sleeve, where a faint smudge of greyish residue marred the pristine silk. "Gunpowder, mon ami. The pistol was held close when it fired, close enough to leave its mark. This is expected, given Mademoiselle Beaumont's role in the scene. But look here." His magnifying glass caught a glint as he focused on the cuff, where a single thread hung loose, its pale hue snagged on a tiny splinter. This thread. It matches the one I found on the prop room's window frame. Most intriguing, non? Hastings leaned in, squinting at the cuff. Good Lord, Poirot. You think Clara climbed through that window to swap the gun? She's graceful enough, I suppose, but it's a risky move for an actress of her stature. Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. Risky, oui, but ambition, it can make one bold. The window was unlatched, the thread is a match, and Mademoiselle Beaumont, she had opportunity. But we must not assume too quickly. The heart of this mystery lies in motive. And motive, it hides in the shadows of the human soul. He carefully removed the thread with tweezers, placing it in a small envelope. This we will compare with the prop room's evidence. Science, Hastings, it is the ally of the little grey cells. They left the costume room and made their way to Clara's dressing room, a small but elegant space adorned with mirrors and a profusion of roses sent by admirers. Clara was there, seated at her vanity, applying a touch of rouge with a hand that trembled slightly. Her dark curls were pinned neatly, but her eyes, when they met Poirot's in the mirror, held a flicker of apprehension. Monsieur Poirot, she said, rising with a practised grace, have you found something new? I can't bear this suspicion hanging over me. Poirot's expression was gentle, but unyielding. Mademoiselle Beaumont, the truth, it is like a costume. It must fit perfectly, or it reveals its flaws. Your gown, from the performance, it carries a clue. Gunpowder, yes, but also a thread, torn from the cuff, which matches one found on the prop room's window. Can you explain this? Clara's face paled, her hand fluttering to her throat. The prop room? Yes, I was there, as I told you, to fetch a fan for my costume. The window frame. It's rough, isn't it? I must have caught my sleeve when I reached for the shelf. But I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I didn't touch the gun. I had no reason to. Her voice rose, a note of desperation creeping in. Poirot's gaze was steady, piercing through her composure. No reason, mademoiselle. Yet I hear of an argument with Monsieur Langston, a rivalry over roles, a resentment that simmered beneath your charm. And now, this thread places you at the scene of the tampering. You must see how this appears. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she held her head high. I know how it looks, but I'm innocent. Victor and I had our differences, yes, but I admired him. His talent, his presence, it pushed me to be better. I wanted to shine beside him, not extinguish him. She sank back into her chair, her hands clasped tightly. Please, you must believe me. Hastings, standing by the door, muttered, She's convincing, Poirot. But that thread, it's damning. And her tears, well, she's an actress, isn't she? Poirot raised a hand, silencing his friend. The tears, they may be genuine, or they may be part of the performance. But the thread, it is no act. Mademoiselle Beaumont, tell me precisely when you visited the prop room, the hour, the circumstances. Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. It was around 2 o'clock before the final rehearsal. I needed the fan for the masquerade scene. It was missing from my dressing room. I went in, found it on a shelf near the window, and left. The door was unlocked. Rourke was nearby, setting up the props. I didn't see the gun, I swear. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. And who else was in the vicinity? Monsieur Rourke, you say? Anyone else? Clara hesitated, then shook her head. It was busy. Stagehands, actors, all preparing. I didn't notice anyone specific. Her voice faltered, as if she sensed the weight of her own vagueness. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have given me much to consider. But know this. The truth, it cannot hide forever." He turned to leave, then paused. "One last question. Your argument with Monsieur Langston, it was about a scene change, you said. Yet I hear it was about a role. A film role, perhaps, that he won, and you did not." Clara's lips parted, then closed. It came up," she admitted. "Victor mentioned the gilded crown. He was gloating, I suppose, and I was hurt. But it was a moment's anger, nothing more. I didn't hate him for it." Poirot inclined his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "A moment's anger, mademoiselle, can be the spark that ignites a crime. We will speak again." As they left the dressing room, Hastings shook his head. "She's in deep, Poirot. The thread, the argument, the gunpowder, it all points to her. Why not arrest her now?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as they stepped into the corridor, the theatre's silence pressing around them. "Because, mon ami, the evidence, it is like a costume. It fits, but it may not reveal the true wearer. Clara's presence in the prop room, it is suspicious, oui, but too obvious. The guilty, they do not leave such clear trails unless they wish to mislead. We must look deeper, into the motives of others, into the shadows they cast." They made their way to the stage, where Inspector Japp was overseeing the removal of the roped-off area around the fatal spot. The constable guarding the prop room nodded as Poirot approached, his key at the ready. Poirot re-examined the window frame, confirming the splinters match with the thread from Clara's gown. "This window," he murmured, "it is the key to the tampering. But who turned it? Clara, or another using her as a mask?" Hastings frowned, his notebook open. "What about Rourke? He was near the prop room, and he's been shifty about that break with Elsie. Could he have helped Clara?" "Possible," Poirot said, his voice soft. "But Rourke's motive, it is unclear. And Elsie Carter, her role in this, it is a mystery yet to unfold. We must also consider Fowler. His debts, his alibi, they may hide more than we see." He straightened, adjusting his hat. "Come, Hastings, we will return tomorrow. The theatre, it holds its secrets tightly. But Hercule Poirot, he will pry them loose." As they stepped into the London dusk, the fog curling around the Alcazar's marquee, Poirot's mind was a whirl of clues. The gunpowder, the thread, the argument, the unguarded prop table. The drama was far from over, and the next act, he sensed, would bring the truth closer to the spotlight. Chapter 8. The Hidden Witness. The Alcazar Theatre, its grandeur dimmed by the weight of recent tragedy, stood shrouded in the late afternoon gloom of London's ever-present fog. The stage, once a canvas for the vibrant illusions of the Crimson Veil, now bore the invisible stain of Victor Langston's blood, a silent testament to the crime that had shattered the theatre's spell. Hercule Poirot, his small frame wrapped in a neatly tailored overcoat, moved through the backstage corridors with the quiet determination of a man who sensed the truth drawing near. Captain Hastings trailed behind, his notebook clutched tightly, his face a mixture of anticipation and unease. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and the faint echo of grease paint, a reminder of the theatre's dual nature, artifice and reality entwined in a deadly dance. Poirot's thoughts were fixed on Elsie Carter, the young chorus girl whose nervous confession about her meeting with Tom Rourke had piqued his interest. Her mention of an argument between Clara Beaumont and Victor Langston overheard outside the star's dressing room, had added a new thread to the web of suspicion. Elsie, Poirot sensed, was a hidden witness, her minor role in the play belying the significance of what she might have seen or heard. He found her in the rehearsal hall, a cavernous space where the cast was gathered for a subdued run-through, their voices muted as they navigated the shadow of loss. Elsie stood apart near a rack of props, her auburn hair catching the light as she adjusted a mask for the masquerade scene. Her green eyes widened at Poirot's approach, and her hands trembled slightly, betraying her unease. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice soft and hesitant, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Have you found out who killed Victor?" Poirot's smile was gentle, but his grey eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "Not yet, Mademoiselle Carter. But the truth, it reveals itself in layers, like the curtains of this stage. You have already helped by telling me of your talk with Monsieur Rourke and of the argument you overheard between Mademoiselle Beaumont and Monsieur Langston. But I sense there is more, you know. Tell me, if you please, of this argument. Every detail it matters." Elsie's fingers tightened on the mask, her knuckles whitening. "I didn't mean to listen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was passing by Victor's dressing room, fetching a shawl for the costume mistress. It was just before 11, before the morning rehearsal. I heard raised voices, Clara's and Victor's. She was angry, saying something about him taking what was hers. I caught the words film and unfair, but I didn't stay long. It felt private." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "Private, oui, but most illuminating. This film, it was the Gilded Crown, non? The role that Mademoiselle Beaumont lost to Monsieur Langston." Elsie nodded, her eyes darting to the other actors who were engrossed in their lines. "Yes, I think so. Everyone knew Clara was furious about it. She'd been so sure the part was hers. She'd even started practicing the accent. When Victor got it, she hid it well, but you could see it in her eyes. She was hurt and angry." Hastings, scribbling in his notebook, muttered, "That's motive, Poirot. Clara's piling up evidence. First the thread, now this argument. She's got to be our culprit." Poirot raised a hand, silencing his friend. "Patience, Hastings. Motive, yes, but opportunity and proof, they must align. Mademoiselle Carter, you say this argument was at 11. Did you see Clara near the prop room later that day, perhaps around 2 o'clock, when she claims to have fetched a fan?" Elsie shook her head, her curls bouncing. "No, sir. I was in the costume room most of the afternoon, sewing. I didn't see Clara until the rehearsal at 3. But—" she hesitated, her voice dropping lower. "I did hear something else later that day. About Victor, I mean." Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. "Speak, mademoiselle. What did you hear?" Elsie glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. "It was after rehearsal, around 4. I was in the wings, tidying up. I heard Victor arguing with someone. Not Clara, but a man. I couldn't see who, but it was near the prop table. Victor sounded angry, saying something about money, a debt he wouldn't pay. The other voice was low, gruff. I think it was Tom Rourke." Poirot's eyebrows rose, his mind cataloguing this new revelation. "A debt, you say, between Monsieur Langston and Monsieur Rourke. This is most significant. You are certain it was Rourke's voice?" Elsie bit her lip, her uncertainty palpable. I think so. It sounded like him, that rough Irish accent. But I didn't see his face, and I didn't stay to listen. I was afraid of getting caught eavesdropping. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. You have done well to tell me, Mademoiselle Carter. This debt, it may be the key to another's motive. Tell me, did you notice anyone else near the prop table that afternoon? Anyone who seemed out of place? Elsie frowned, thinking. Not really, sir. It was a busy day. Stagehands, actors, all rushing about. But I did see Jimmy, the prop boy, hanging around the table just before the performance. He looked nervous, kept glancing at the gun. I thought he was just worried about doing his job right. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Jimmy, the young assistant to Monsieur Rourke. Bon, we must speak with him. Merci, mademoiselle. If you recall anything more, you will come to me, oui? Elsie nodded, her relief evident as she returned to her mask. Poirot and Hastings stepped away, the detective's mind whirring with the new information. A debt between Langston and Rourke, Poirot mused, his voice low. And young Jimmy, nervous near the gun. The plot, it thickens, Hastings. Hastings flipped through his notebook, his brow furrowed. Rourke's looking shadier by the minute, Poirot. First he's off with Elsie during the break, now this debt business, and Clara's still in the frame with that argument. Could they be working together? Possible, Poirot said, his tone cautious. But we must tread carefully. A debt suggests a personal grievance, but the gun's tampering. It required precision and opportunity. Rourke's absence, Clara's presence in the prop room, Jimmy's nerves, these are threads, but they do not yet form a tapestry. He adjusted his hat, his eyes scanning the rehearsal hall. We must find this Jimmy. His nervousness, it may reveal more than he intends. They located Jimmy, the prop boy, near the loading dock, a lanky youth of 17 with a mop of unruly hair and a face speckled with freckles. He was sweeping the concrete floor, his movements jerky, his eyes darting as Poirot approached. Monsieur Jimmy, Poirot said, his voice gentle but firm. You assist Monsieur Rourke with the props, oui? I'm told you were near the prop table before the performance, looking nervous. Tell me, what troubled you? Jimmy's broom stilled, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. I wasn't nervous, sir, he stammered, just making sure everything was set. Mr. Rourke told me to double-check the gun, make sure it was in place. I didn't touch it, honest. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. And yet, Mademoiselle Carter says you seemed anxious. Did you see anything unusual? Anyone near the gun who should not have been? Jimmy's eyes flickered, his hands tightening on the broom. No, sir. It was just the usual crowd. Actors, crew. I did see Miss Beaumont pass by, but she didn't stop. And Mr. Fowler was there earlier, checking the set. That's all. Poirot noted the boy's unease, the way his gaze avoided direct contact. And Monsieur Rourke, he gave you no other instructions. Nothing about the gun, perhaps. Jimmy shook his head vigorously. No, sir. Just to make sure it was there. I didn't know it was real, I swear. His voice cracked, and he looked down, his ears reddening. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Merci, Jimmy. You may return to your work. But I will speak with you again. As the boy scurried off, Poirot turned to Hastings. The young one, he is frightened, Hastings. Not of guilt, perhaps, but of something he knows, or fears. Hastings frowned, his notebook open. He's hiding something, Poirot. And Rourke's debt, Clara's argument, it's all pointing to a conspiracy. But how do they fit together? Poirot's eyes gleamed as they stepped back into the theatre's dim interior. That, mon ami, is the question. The hidden witness, she has given us a new lens. Rourke's debt, a motive of greed. Clara's anger, a motive of envy. But the gun, it is the pivot, and someone turned it to murder. We must press harder, for the truth, it is close. He adjusted his scarf, his mind alight with the interplay of clues. The Alcazar's stage was set for the next revelation, and Poirot was ready to draw it into the spotlight. Chapter 9. The Rehearsal of Truth. The Alcazar Theatre, its stage now a silent monument to Victor Langston's untimely end, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot orchestrated his next move. The evening light, filtering through the high windows, cast long, wavering shadows across the set of the Crimson Veil, where the painted Venetian arches stood as a mocking backdrop to the grim reality of murder. Poirot, his small frame radiating an almost palpable intensity, had gathered the principal players, Clara Beaumont, Edmund Fowler, Tom Rourke, and a reluctant Sir Reginald Vance, on the stage for a reconstruction of the fatal scene. Captain Hastings stood at the edge of the footlights, his notebook open, his eyes darting between the suspects as they took their positions. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and the faint, lingering tang of gunpowder, a reminder of the crime that bound them all. Poirot's plan was simple, yet audacious: to reenact the duel scene, moment by moment, to uncover the truth hidden in the interplay of actions and glances. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and commanding, "we are here to recreate the moment of Monsieur Langston's death, not as a performance, but as a mirror to reveal what was concealed. Each of you will play your part as it was on that night. I will observe, and the little grey cells, they will see what the eyes of others missed." Clara Beaumont, her face pale but composed, stood centre stage in her ivory gown, a replica of the one now held as evidence. Her dark curls were pinned tightly, but her hands trembled as she clutched a prop pistol, loaded with a blank for safety. Edmund Fowler, his sharp features taut with irritation, took his place in the lighting booth above, barking directions to a nervous technician. Tom Rourke, his broad shoulders hunched, positioned himself in the wings, handling a tray of props with exaggerated care. Sir Reginald, his florid face flushed with unease, watched from the sidelines, his silk handkerchief crumpled in his fist. Inspector Japp, summoned to oversee the proceedings, stood near Hastings, his bulldog face set in a scowl of skepticism. Poirot raised a hand, signalling the start. "Mademoiselle Beaumont, you will begin with your line. The duel scene. It is the climax. Proceed." Clara took a deep breath, her voice steady, but laced with tension. "For your deceit, Alessandro, you pay the final price." She raised the pistol, her arm steady, as she aimed at an imaginary Langston. The stage lights, adjusted by Fowler, bathed her in a stark glow, highlighting the faint tremor in her fingers. She pulled the trigger, and the blank fired with a sharp crack echoing through the empty theatre. The sound was jarring, and Clara flinched, her eyes darting to Poirot as if seeking reassurance. Poirot's gaze was unyielding, noting every detail: her hesitation, the angle of the gun, the way her sleeve brushed the prop table as she stepped back. "Bon," he said softly. "Now, let us pause. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you fired as you did that night, oui? But I observe a hesitation, a moment's pause before you pulled the trigger." "Why?" Clara's lips parted, her eyes wide. I was nervous, Monsieur Poirot. The performance, the crowd, it was overwhelming. I didn't know the gun was real, I swear." Her voice broke, and she clutched the pistol to her chest, as if it could shield her from his scrutiny. Poirot stepped closer, his grey eyes piercing. "Nervous, you say? Or did you suspect, mademoiselle? Did you feel the weight of the gun, sense its difference, and yet proceed?" His voice was gentle, but relentless, cutting through her defences. Clara's face crumpled, and she sank onto a prop chair, her hands covering her face. I did check the gun," she admitted, her voice muffled. "Just before the scene, in the wings. It felt heavy, different, and I looked at it. I saw it was loaded, not with blanks, but I thought it was a prank, a cruel joke by Victor to unsettle me. He'd done such things before, small taunts to throw me off. I was angry, but I didn't want to stop the show. It was my chance to shine." Her sobs echoed in the silent theatre, raw and unfeigned. Hastings, his pen poised, whispered to Poirot, "Good Lord, Poirot," she knew. That's practically a confession. Why didn't she stop the performance? Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind racing. "Because, mon ami, ambition is a powerful blindfold. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you chose to fire, believing it a prank. But tell me, who could have placed the real gun? Who had access to the prop table in those final moments?" Clara wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. "I don't know. Rourke was there, setting up. Jimmy, the prop boy, was hovering nearby. And Fowler, he came down from the booth just before the scene to check the set. But I didn't see anyone touch the gun." Poirot turned to Rourke, who stood rigid in the wings, his face flushed. "Monsieur Rourke, you were at the prop table, oui? You checked the gun, as you told young Jimmy to do. Did you notice anything amiss?" Rourke's hands clenched, his cap twisting in his grip. "No, sir. I checked it at 4, like always. It was fine. Blanks, same as ever. I didn't see it again, till Clara took it for the scene." His voice was gruff, but his eyes flickered with unease, avoiding Poirot's gaze. Poirot's attention shifted to Fowler, who had descended from the booth, his sharp nose twitching with irritation. "Monsieur Fowler, you were on the stage before the performance, checking the set. Did you approach the prop table?" Fowler's eyes narrowed. "I glanced at it, yes, to make sure everything was in place. It's my job, Poirot, but I didn't touch the blasted gun. I was back in the booth by the time the scene started. Jenkins can confirm it." His tone was defiant, but his hands betrayed a slight tremor. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing each response. "And you, Monsieur Vance," he said, turning to Sir Reginald, who stood puffing indignantly at the stage's edge. "You were in the auditorium, watching the performance. Did you see anything unusual in the wings? Any movement that caught your eye?" Sir Reginald mopped his brow, his voice booming. "I was focused on the stage, Poirot, on my investment. The house was packed, the lights were perfect, until that shot. I saw nothing in the wings, nothing at all." His indignation seemed genuine, but Poirot noted the way his eyes darted to Clara, as if gauging her reaction. Poirot paced slowly before the group, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us consider the sequence. The gun. It is checked by Monsieur Rourke at 4. Mademoiselle Beaumont inspects it before the scene, finds it suspicious, yet proceeds. Monsieur Fowler is on the stage, then in the booth. Monsieur Vance watches from the auditorium. And young Jimmy, he hovers near the prop table, nervous. Someone, in this chain of moments, replaced the blank with a bullet. Who? The silence was heavy, broken only by Clara's soft sobs. Poirot's eyes swept over the group, catching the interplay of glances. Rourke's guarded look toward Fowler, Fowler's sharp glance at Clara, Sir Reginald's fidgeting hands. "The truth," Poirot said, his voice rising. "It is like a spotlight. It reveals what hides in the dark. I urge you, if you know more, speak now." No one did. Japp, leaning against a prop column, cleared his throat. "This is all well and good, Poirot, but we need hard evidence. Clara's admission. She knew the gun was off. That's enough to hold her, isn't it?" Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice was firm. "Not yet, Inspector. Mademoiselle Beaumont's confession, it is a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole. She acted in folly, perhaps, but the hand that placed the gun, it is another's. We must find the one who planned this murder, not merely the one who pulled the trigger." As the group dispersed, Clara escorted away by a constable for further questioning, Hastings approached Poirot, his face troubled. "She's in it up to her neck, Poirot. Knowing the gun was real and firing anyway, that's reckless, even if she didn't mean to kill him. But who swapped the gun? Rourke? Fowler? Or that boy, Jimmy?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he adjusted his hat, preparing to leave the stage. "The answer, Hastings, lies in the motive. Clara's ambition, Rourke's debt, Fowler's debts, even Sir Reginald's fears for his theatre. These are the currents that swirl around this crime. But the gun, it was placed with intent. And that intent, it is hidden in the heart of one who planned this tragedy." He paused, his gaze lingering on the empty stage. "Tomorrow, we will seek young Jimmy again. His fear, it may yet unlock the final piece." As they stepped into the foggy London night, the Alcazar's marquee loomed above, its letters a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Poirot's mind was alight with the clues, the thread, the gunpowder, the debt, the argument, and now Clara's damning admission. The curtain was rising on the truth, and Poirot was ready to direct its final act. Chapter 10. The motive unveiled, the Alcazar Theatre, its once vibrant stage, now a sombre arena of truth, stood bathed in the muted glow of a late morning sun. The air within was heavy, not with the anticipation of performance, but with the weight of an impending revelation. Hercule Poirot, his small figure immaculate in a charcoal suit, stood centre stage, his hands clasped behind his back, his grey eyes gleaming with the quiet certainty of a man who had unravelled a knot. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood at his side, his notebook worn from fervent scribbling, his face a mixture of awe and impatience. Inspector Japp, summoned once more, leaned against a prop column, his bulldog features set in a wary frown. The suspects, Clara Beaumont, Edmund Fowler, Tom Rourke, and Sir Reginald Vance, were assembled before Poirot, their faces a tableau of apprehension, defiance, and fatigue. The stage was set, not for the crimson veil, but for Poirot's final act of deduction. The painted Venetian arches loomed behind, their artificial splendour a stark contrast to the grim reality unfolding. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the tension like a spotlight through fog. "We have played a game of shadows, but the time for truth has come. Victor Langston was murdered, not by accident, but by design. A real bullet in a prop gun, fired before 1,000 witnesses. Hercule Poirot has seen through the illusion, and now the motive, it is unveiled." He turned to Clara Beaumont, whose pale face was framed by dark curls, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her ivory dress, a fresh one untainted by gunpowder, seemed to mock her precarious position. Mademoiselle Beaumont, Poirot said, his tone gentle but unyielding. You have admitted to knowing the gun was real before you fired. You believed it a prank, you say, a cruel jest by Monsieur Langston. But I say it was no prank. It was a trap, set by your own hand. Clara's eyes widened, her voice a desperate whisper. No, Monsieur Poirot. I swear I didn't mean to kill him. I thought it was a blank, a trick to throw me off. I was angry, yes, but I didn't want him dead. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. Let us examine the facts. The thread from your gown, found on the prop room's window frame, places you there, where the gun was kept. Your argument with Monsieur Langston, overheard by Mademoiselle Carter, reveals your envy. A film roll, the gilded crown, stolen from you by his star power. And your confession, that you checked the gun and saw it was loaded, yet fired anyway. This, mademoiselle, is the act of one driven by passion, not caution. Clara's sobs broke the silence, her shoulders shaking. I was jealous, yes, she admitted, her voice raw. Victor gloated about that roll, rubbed it in my face. I wanted to teach him a lesson, to make him falter on stage. I swapped the blank for a bullet, but I thought it was a dud, a stage prop, not live. I bribed a supplier, a man I knew from a past production, to get it. I never meant to kill him. Her words dissolved into tears, her composure shattered. Hastings, his pen frozen, whispered to Poirot. Good Lord, Poirot, she's confessed. That's it, isn't it? She's the murderer. Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes never leaving Clara. Not quite, mon ami. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you are guilty of tampering, oui, but the intent to social system, murder. This is where the truth diverges. Your instructions specify that the co-star, Clara Beaumont, swapped the prop gun for a real one out of jealousy, intending to harm Langston, which aligns with her confession here. However, her claim of believing the bullet was a dud introduces a wrinkle. In Agatha Christie's style, confessions often contain partial truths or misdirection. So let us refine the narrative to maintain your solution while preserving the Christie-esque complexity. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. You acted, mademoiselle, with malice in your heart. Your jealousy, it blinded you to the consequences. The supplier, he has been found, has he not, Inspector Japp? Japp nodded, stepping forward. Aye, we tracked him down, a shady bloke in Soho. He admitted to selling Clara a bullet, claimed it was a blank for theatrical use. Says he didn't know it was live, but we're holding him for questioning. Clara's head snapped up, her eyes wild. He swore it was safe. I only wanted Victor to stumble, to miss his mark for once. I didn't know. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. Poirot turned to the group, his presence commanding. The motive, it was envy, a poison that festers in the heart. Mademoiselle Beaumont, driven by the loss of a coveted role, sought to sabotage her rival. But the bullet, it was real, and Victor Langston paid the price. The evidence, the thread, the gunpowder, your presence in the prop room, your confession. It forms a chain that binds you. Fowler's sharp voice cut in, his face pale. But what about the prop room? Someone else could have tampered with the gun after her. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A possibility, Monsieur Fowler, but unlikely. Oh, the window's latch, the thread, the timing. All point to Mademoiselle Beaumont. Monsieur Rourke's absence, it provided opportunity, but his motive, a debt, was weak, and his actions accounted for. Your debts, Monsieur Fowler, they suggested a motive, but your alibi holds. Monsieur Vance, Your fears for the theatre's reputation, they were genuine, but not murderous. Non, the heart of this crime, is Clara's envy. Sir Reginald, his jowls trembling, sputtered, "This will ruin the Alcazar. Poirot, are you certain?" Poirot's gaze was steady. "The truth, Monsieur Vance, it does not bend to reputation. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you will accompany Inspector Japp. The law must take its course." Japp stepped forward, his expression grim. "Clara Beaumont, you're under arrest for the murder of Victor Langston." He gestured to a constable who gently took Clara's arm, leading her away as her sobs echoed. Hastings, watching her go, shook his head. "Poor girl. She didn't mean to kill him, Poirot. Can't something be done?" Poirot's face was solemn. "The law, mon ami, it judges actions, not intentions. Her jealousy set the stage for tragedy. But the supplier, his role in providing a live bullet, this must be investigated. There may yet be more to uncover." As the group dispersed, the stage empty save for Poirot and Hastings, the detective adjusted his hat, his eyes distant. "The human heart, Hastings, it is the true stage of crime. Clara's ambition, it was her script, and she played it to the end." They stepped into the foggy London street, the Alcazar's marquis a silent witness. The case was closed, but Poirot's mind lingered on the shadows of intent, the fine line between malice and mistake. Chapter 11. The final act, the Alcazar. Theatre, its grandeur now tinged with a sombre air, stood quiet under the grey veil of a London morning. The stage, once alive with the passion of the crimson veil, was now a hollow shell, its painted arches bearing silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded. Hercule Poirot, his small figure immaculate in a tailored suit, stood in the manager's office, where the heavy drapes and polished mahogany seemed to absorb the weight of the moment. Captain Hastings, his notebook tucked away, stood by the window, gazing out at the fog that curled around the theatre's marquee. Inspector Japp, his bulldog face set in a mixture of satisfaction and weariness, leaned against the desk, his hands clasped over a folder of evidence. The arrest of Clara Beaumont had brought the case to a he. Close, yet Poirot's grey eyes held a flicker of unrest, as if the final curtain had not yet fallen. The office door opened, admitting Sir Reginald Vance, his florid face pale and his silk handkerchief clutched tightly. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice strained. "Is it true?" "Clara, arrested for Victor's murder. The Alcazar will never recover from this scandal." His jowls trembled, but his eyes held a spark of determination. "We must salvage what we can. The play. It must go on, in Victor's memory." Poirot inclined his head, his expression unreadable. "Monsieur Vance, the theatre. It is a place of resilience, oui? But first, we must ensure justice is complete. Mademoiselle Beaumont's confession. It is a cornerstone, but there are loose threads that must be tied." He turned to Japp. "Inspector, the supplier who provided the bullet. He's been questioned further, non?" Japp nodded, flipping open his folder. "Aye, Poirot. Name's Harry Gibbs, a lowlife who deals in theatrical props, some less legal than others. He swears he gave Clara what he thought was a blank, bought from a dodgy source in Whitechapel. We're digging into his contacts, but he's sticking to his story. Says Clara paid him £10 to slip her a special prop for the show. Didn't ask questions, of course." Japp's scowl deepened. "If he's lying, we'll get it out of him." Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind sifting through the details. And this Gibbs, he knew Mademoiselle Beaumont from a past production? "That's right," Japp said. "They worked together on a review 2 years back. She knew he could get what she wanted, no questions asked. Hastings, turning from the window, shook his head. Poor Clara. She thought she was playing a prank, but she was played instead. Do you think Gibbs double-crossed her, Poirot? Gave her a live round on purpose? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Possible, mon ami, but unlikely. Gibbs, he is a small fish, driven by profit, not malice. The live bullet, it was likely a mistake in his supply chain, a dangerous one, but not intentional. No, the true crime lies with Mademoiselle Beaumont. Her jealousy, her desire to humble Monsieur Langston, it set this tragedy in motion. He paused, his gaze softening. Yet I feel a pang of pity, Hastings. She sought to wound his pride, not his life. Sir Reginald, pacing now, interjected. Pity or not, Poirot, the damage is done. The papers are already screaming. Murder at the Alcazar. We'll be lucky to draw a crowd for weeks. But I've spoken to Fowler. We're recasting Victor's role, rewriting the script. The show must go on, you understand. Poirot's smile was faint, tinged with irony. The show, Monsieur Vance, it always goes on. But let us not forget the cost. A man is dead. A woman's life ruined by her own ambition. The stage, it mirrors life, but it cannot erase its consequences. Japp cleared his throat, closing his folder. Well, Poirot, you've done it again. Clara's in custody. Gibbs is being grilled, and we've got enough evidence to make the case stick. The thread, the gunpowder, her confession, it's airtight. Anything else you need? Poirot shook his head, his hands clasped behind his back. No, Inspector. The case, it is complete. But I ask you to pursue this Gibbs further. His negligence, it played a role, and justice must be thorough. He turned to Sir Reginald. As for your theatre, monsieur, I trust you will honour Monsieur Langston's memory with dignity, not spectacle. Sir Reginald nodded, his defiance softening. We will, Poirot. A memorial performance, perhaps, when the dust settles. For Victor Poirot adjusted his hat, preparing to leave. Then my work here is done. The truth, it has been unveiled. And Hercule Poirot, he steps back from the stage. As they exited the office, Hastings lingered, his face troubled. It's a sad business, Poirot. Clara's not a monster, just a woman who let envy get the better of her. And Victor, well, he wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve this. Poirot's voice was soft, almost melancholic. The human heart, Hastings, it is a fragile thing. Envy, ambition, pride, they are the sparks that ignite tragedy. Mademoiselle Beaumont played her part, and now she pays the price. He paused at the theatre's entrance, the fog outside, curling like a curtain. Come, mon ami. The Alcazar has its answers. Let us leave it to its ghosts. They stepped into the London street, the Marquis's letters fading into the mist. The case was closed, but Poirot's mind lingered on the delicate balance of motive and mistake, the fine line that had turned a moment of malice into murder. Chapter 12. The curtain falls. The fog that cloaked London on that chilly October evening in 1925 seemed to mirror the sombre mood that had settled over Hercule Poirot's flat in Whitehaven Mansions. The sitting room, with its polished furniture and meticulously arranged ornaments, was a sanctuary of order, a stark contrast to the chaotic passions that had unravelled at the Alcazar Theatre. Poirot sat in his favourite armchair, a steaming cup of tisane cradled in his hands, the delicate aroma of a chamomile blending with the faint scent of wax polish. His grey eyes, usually so sharp, held a reflective glint as he gazed at the flickering flames in the grate. Captain Hastings, sprawled comfortably on the sofa, nursed a glass of whiskey, his face etched with the lingering unease of the case's resolution. The arrest of Clara Beaumont had closed the curtain on the murder of Victor Langston, yet the denouement, though conclusive, left a bitter-sweet taste. Poirot sipped his tisane, his thoughts drifting to the intricate web of envy and ambition that had ensnared the Alcazar's players. "Hastings, mon ami," he said at last, his voice soft but resonant. "The stage, it is a mirror of life, no? It shows us the heights of passion and the depths of folly. Mademoiselle Beaumont, she played her role to perfection, but it was a role that led to tragedy." Hastings set down his glass, his brow furrowed. "I still can't quite wrap my head around it, Poirot. Clara, of all people, she seemed so refined, so talented. How could she let jealousy drive her to such a thing? And to think she didn't even mean to kill him." He shook his head, his honest face troubled. "How did you know it was her, not Rourke or Fowler? They had motives too, didn't they?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "The little grey cells, Hastings. They see what the heart conceals. From the beginning, the clues pointed to Mademoiselle Beaumont. The thread from her gown, caught on the prop room's window frame, placed her at the scene of the tampering. Her argument with Langston, overheard by Mademoiselle Carter, revealed a wound, the loss of the film roll, the gilded crown which burned in her soul, and her confession that she checked the gun and saw it was loaded, yet fired anyway. This was the act of one consumed by envy, not caution." Hastings leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "But Rourke's debt, Fowler's debts, those seemed like strong motives too. And that prop boy, Jimmy, he was so nervous. I thought for sure there was a conspiracy." Poirot nodded, setting his cup on the table with precision. "Oui, mon ami, the red herrings, they were plentiful. Monsieur Rourke's debt to Langston, it suggested a personal grievance, but his actions were accounted for, his absence during the break explained by his meeting with Mademoiselle Carter. Monsieur Fowler's gambling debts, they hinted at desperation, but his alibi in the lighting booth held firm, confirmed by Jenkins. And young Jimmy, his fare was that of a boy caught in a storm not of his making. He saw nothing, knew nothing beyond his duties. None. The heart of this crime was Clara's ambition, her desire to dim Langston's star, even if only for a moment. Hastings sipped his whiskey, his expression thoughtful. "And that supplier, Gibbs, what about him? If he'd given her a proper blank, none of this would have happened." Poirot's eyes darkened, a rare flicker of frustration crossing his face. "Gibbs, he is a footnote, Hastings, a careless man who dealt in shadows. His negligence provided the means, but it was Clara's hand that set the stage. The bullet, live by mistake, was the instrument of her folly. Inspector Japp, he will ensure Gibbs faces justice for his part, but the true crime, it lies with her." He rose, pacing slowly before the fire, his hands clasped behind his back. "The theatre, it is a place of illusion, but also of truth. Clara Beaumont, she played her role as Lady Isabella, but her true performance was in the prop room, where she swapped the blank for what she thought was a harmless prop. Her envy, it was her script, her ambition, the director. And yet, I feel a sadness, Hastings. She sought to wound, not to kill, but the result, it is the same." Hastings nodded, his voice soft. "It's a tragedy, all right, like something out of one of their plays. What happens to the Alcazar now? Sir Reginald was in a state about the scandal. Poirot's smile was faint, tinged with irony. "The Alcazar. It will endure. Monsieur Vance, he is a showman at heart. He will turn this tragedy into a spectacle, a memorial performance, a new star to replace Langston. The public, they are drawn to drama, even when it bleeds. But for me, the stage is closed. The truth, it has been found. And Hercule Poirot, he steps back into the wings." Hastings drained his glass, setting it down with a clink. "You're a marvel, Poirot. I thought we'd be chasing shadows forever, but you saw it clear as day. What's next? Another case?" Poirot's eyes twinkled as he adjusted his tie, his composure restored. "Always, mon ami. The world, it is full of mysteries, and the little grey cells, they are never idle. But for tonight, we rest. The fog, it waits outside, but here, in the warmth, we have order." They sat in companionable silence, the fire crackling softly. Outside, the London fog swirled, wrapping the city in its mysteries. But within Poirot's flat, the world was briefly at peace. The curtain had fallen on the Alcazar's tragedy, and Poirot, his work done, awaited the next call to the stage of justice.